It's one of my stims, I guess, that I'm learning about. So, speaking of stims, should we just jump into the fucking episode? All right. So, wow. Everybody, welcome to the show. And we have somebody with us who's been on a long hiatus for a while. We got the fucking brother Charlie back on the fucking microphone. What's up, Charlie?
Hiatus. How's your hiatus?
My hiatus is very... No, but honestly, for real, yeah, it's good to have you back, dude. Like, honestly, I've been wanting to. I guess I should turn off the music so we're not fucking getting on YouTube's bullshit. But yeah, man, happy to have you back.
Jim, we got a guest.
Hello, Jim. You probably can't hear me, but hello.
He used to. My dad.
Shit, man. Well, first off, real quick, I don't know. Everyone's been talking about this, but I kind of want to bring it up. I'm sure you saw what happened at the Oscars. Will Smith and Chris Rock.
Yeah.
Dude, fucking wild.
Right. Well, my dad told me about it. He was the first person to tell me about it, but he said Will Smith. Or Will Ferrell, not Will Smith.
If it had been Will Ferrell who had done it, I 100% like it would have been a bit and it would have been hilarious. And part of me thought that, and still kind of does think that it might have been staged.
Yeah, I mean, I find it hard to believe that it wasn't, but those guys are both so good that it was like, was it? Like,
The only thing that makes me think that it wasn't staged is like you feel Chris Rock's genuine reaction to it. I thought it was fake at first because like you kind of see Will Smith almost smiling like as he turns around, but then like I don't know. I think the moment that I can pinpoint is at one point after Chris Rock says like, "Hey man, it was a G.I. Jane joke," and Will Smith fucking yells for the second time like, "Keep my wife's name out your fucking mouth." And there's a moment where Chris Rock goes, "Oh, ooh," and like you can tell he's about to dig in because he's a fucking 30-year veteran of comedy, and he's about to be like, "Oh, you're a heckler, and now I'm about to deal with you, and I've got fucking more jokes than you can think of." But then he holds back because he's trying to get professional and continue making money, making fucking Madagascar 7.
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever. Fucking grown-ups. Fucking 4.8. That's the only thing that makes me think it wasn't fake. But still, it was just wild.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like, the anger and look in Will Smith's eye, but he's so good at acting, you couldn't really tell if he was fake or not, could you? Because he looked genuinely pissed.
Yeah, but like you said, he's an actor, and I have a theory that really good actors almost have to be somewhat sociopathic to be able to just like switch their personalities so aggressively and be able to
what they need to be as a person. Like that's what you're being, a different person. And I guess.
And so that kind of leads us into in a somewhat roundabout way the idea of the topic that we're talking about today is just going to be general mental health, and it can be seen as a taboo subject in society. I think it's become less taboo, but it's also something that like I don't know, it's not easy for a lot of people to talk about. And yeah, Will Smith slapping the shit out of Chris Rock is a pretty clear sign of some sort of mental health condition at some point, whether it's him like wanting so hard to protect Jada Smith from insults or he just is, I don't know.
He was jealous that Kanye took the mic all those years ago. He had to have his stage moment. Just kidding.
I know. I honestly, I had that thought. I was like, this is a marketing move of, and Kanye is kind of the master of this, of like, I have this project coming out. I'm going to make sure that I am talked about. And the easiest way to do that in this culture is to be the most outrageous person. And I don't know, blending your own sort of psychological issues within that, of just like, if you seem crazy, you're gonna get talked about more. That it's the Trump thing.
Well,
That's
everything's so crazy. Yeah. You got
Yeah.
to catch the headlines. You got to be even crazier than the last crazy thing, which is pretty.
You gotta be
crazy.
you gotta be wild. You gotta be out there fucking wild as shit. Otherwise, nobody's gonna talk about you because it doesn't get the clicks. Whereas, if Trump says some outlandish shit, then CNN and Fox News are all gonna talk about it. If Will Smith slaps fucking Chris Rock at the Oscars, everybody's going to be talking about Will Smith. And guess what? Will Smith just happens to have a fairly new book out that wasn't really supposedly doing super well. And then now his book sales and his like Google trends are off the fucking charts.
That seems like the most likely explanation. Sadly, but honestly, yeah.
Yeah, it might be strategic, but also is looking at the world, or sort of like, I don't know. Maybe that is an external symptom of being mentally unwell, of thinking about how your actions, I don't know. So with my current sort of like coming to awareness about like ASD, like being on the spectrum, is I've noticed that a lot of the things that I do are planned out in advance, because you're trying to make yourself fit into a world that you don't necessarily fit into. So if you can plan your actions out and not just have to fly by the cuff of your pants, I don't think that's actually a phrase, but whatever, we'll go with it. The seat of your pants. If you're not, I don't know, if you don't feel comfortable in your skin, just being able to sort of do what you would naturally do, you plan things out and you strategize your actions and your conversations to fit into the neurotypical world that you might not necessarily associate with. So maybe that's sort of, I don't know, maybe that's an aspect.
That sounds really similar to kind of like what I got stuck with, which is I either overthought everything painfully, just like obsessively planning every single possible, branch of logic of if this, then that, or I don't think about it at all. I don't really have it in between. Like, and that's the bipolar of Charlie, as I am either all or nothing with everything in my life. And it's weird. It's kind of cool. It's part of who I am, but it's also part of what I need to, work with and improve on. So I'm either on like redlining or I'm like stalling out. I got to figure out how to ride the gas a little better.
Yeah. No, I think that's something that fundamentally a lot of people tend to struggle with. But it can just be more pronounced with certain groups of the population. But this is why I guess I feel like, I think the pandemic did a lot to sort of bring forward, individual people's personal mental health issues that they had that were sort of underlying and not really addressed. But then when you all of a sudden sort of get cut off from even being able to go to work or be able to sort of engage in your social climate and like sort of meet people or, see people that you associate with, I think that brought to the forefront a lot of people's own mental health conditions that were underlying that they didn't really realize that they had. And I think we're just starting to sort of maybe see the effects of a lot of those people. And that's why I think it's important. And I think it's been good that the media, at least with like TV shows and sort of being aware of mental health issues more, I guess recently, is a good thing, but it's still something that can sort of feel stigmatized.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think there's definitely a substantial amount of people that have, I'm not muted, right? Yeah. A substantial amount of people who have come up with discovering their own depression or other mental issues or.
What if you had been muted this entire time and I've just been talking
Right.
to a blank voice for and waiting for a response?
No, I thought I muted myself a second ago, but
No.
I'm good.
Yeah, go
But
ahead.
I think it was also just made me think, what was it? Oh, being someone who has a long history of concussions, and I was kind of getting my concussions right when the world was blowing up in terms of awareness about concussions, like, 2000s. Could that have been a precursor? Because it's kind of like a hidden head injury that leads to, some other mental disabilities potentially. But it's kind of an interesting middle ground, right? It's not an obvious injury. Like it was stigmatized, not as bad as mental health, but when I was playing rugby, it'd be like, shake it off.
Yeah, maybe not so much stigmatized as sort of more minimalized of just
Yeah,
like,
which is why I think it's an interesting middle ground. Maybe the awareness of concussions laid a foundation so people would be more willing to accept, like a decade later, the awareness of mental health.
yeah, like playing hockey or like playing football or any kind of somewhat contact sport as a kid. Phrases like "you got your bell rung" were a lot more prevalent. It's just like, yeah, you got your bell rung. You know what I mean? It wasn't seen as serious as an issue as we sort of know it today with CTE and all that stuff, and how CTE can sort of affect your mental functions. And that's definitely probably a factor. But also, so my sister had a really good point of, we were sort of talking about the idea of nature versus nurture. And what role that has to play, like what your genetics have to play versus what your environment has had to play. And the metaphor that she said, which I thought was really good, was nature and your genetics load the gun, and then nurture and your environment pulls the trigger on a lot of issues. So having the genetic predisposition towards a potential disorder or a potential, brain sort of miscalculation or misfunction, you already have the predisposition for that, but it's not necessarily going to be prevalent until your environment or your stressors or your trauma pulls the trigger on the gun. And then that releases that sort of, predisposed, mental status. That's what sort of releases it into the world. And I thought that was really interesting. Like nature obviously has its big role to play, and as well nurture has its role to play, but it's when both of them sort of align together is when a lot of these sort of, potential disorders or, mental illnesses, depression, anxiety, it's when the two forces align together is when you get like the full encapsulation of the result. So it's not necessarily one or the either, but if you're not genetically predisposed towards depression, something bad could happen to you, and it's not even gonna, it's not gonna necessarily touch your radar. You're gonna feel the feelings in the moment, but then you're gonna be able to move on. But if you are predisposed towards depression or bipolar or autism or whatever the case may be, when nature sort of rears its ugly head and sort of shows you or allows you to sort of tap into that place that's in your head already, then you're going to sort of start experiencing those symptoms.
Yeah. So well, I think that's a really interesting way to put it. And what I've realized over time, and with everything that they're learning, pretty much all of these are on a spectrum of some sort. So I think that the missing link for me mathematically there would be the weight of your finger on the trigger is your weight on the spectrum, right? Like, so if you're not extremely predisposed, you're not, holding it heavy on the trigger, right? Like there's a lot more room to actually go through that action of pulling it. It's going to take a bigger trigger to put you in the same place as somebody who's more unstable at the other end of the spectrum, who's like constantly feathering, finger on the trigger, just waiting for that, tipping point. That's really interesting metaphor. I like that.
Yeah, no, and yeah, you're what do they call it in, like, I don't know, hunting or in the army? It's trigger something. Not trigger response.
Oh,
But
like the actual technical term for it.
sort of
Yeah.
having control over when you pull the trigger, so you don't like have that sort of jerking motion of like that fear response. I guess trigger control. I'm sure I would be corrected on that, and there's a better term for it, but yeah, same kind of idea. The other metaphor that I sort of came to the other night, I've found with my own personal, I don't know, mental health awareness, I've found metaphors to be super useful because it's a way of explaining emotions without actually having to necessarily define the emotions or the situation. It's just like it gives you a good comparison.
Yeah.
So one of the metaphors that I've used, and I think I talked to you about this, is now that I have this awareness of how my brain works, I consider that that's my tool belt. And then going to therapy is now I'm filling that tool belt up with different tools that are going to allow me to be able to sort of, progress myself through normal society. But the metaphor that I came up with the other night is, I've spent a lot of time on my own working on my mental health. And I think, so the metaphor is me doing the research and thinking about things and getting myself to a place, as far as I can take me, is if I'm climbing Mount Everest, I was able to get myself to boot camp, and then getting a therapist is now I have a Sherpa that's going to take me from base camp. Did I say boot camp before? I meant base camp. I got myself to base camp, and then now I need a Sherpa to take me from base camp to the summit.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really poignant metaphor, because that's sort of when you're talking about, depression or anxiety or, alcoholism or dependence on any substance or just kind of any mental health thing, you need to get yourself to base camp before you can even start thinking about climbing the mountain. Because if you're still in, Istanbul, you're never going to get to the fucking mountain. You know what I mean? You need to get yourself to the mountain. And then once you have that sort of awareness of understanding that, all right, I got myself this far, now I need supplemental oxygen, and I need a Sherpa to set the lines of rope ahead of me and to put the ladders down over the crevasses. And now I have another partner that's going to get me to the top of the summit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think in those cases, the guide or mentor becomes much more critical, but the role of the mentor in life in general is pretty valuable. But I think especially in these situations, right, when you need somebody to help get you out of the shit. And I think my problem is that I was like an hour outside base camp, like almost there, pretending like, oh, I'll be there, but I was like never really invested in even getting started.
Sure. Yeah.
I just kept pretending like I'm on my way.
I mean,
yeah, all's good. But
if you look
running in place.
if you look at, documentaries of people climbing Mount Everest, getting yourself to base camp isn't fucking easy. Like, that's a journey in itself.
Yeah, well, positive reinforcement and, like things we talked about the other day, just little things like mantras out loud, right? Or even saying small positive things out loud, it really does, make a pretty big difference. But I think my biggest problem, and I don't know if it's as common, but it's something that I'm becoming more aware of, and it's very hard because it's kind of in itself an anti-pattern, is self-honesty. Like I was so good at pretending that I lied to myself. So not only was I was saying I'm almost at base camp, I'm not just belittling myself or like struggling to get up the hill. I'm legitimately running in one place, pretending that I can't go any further, or that I'm on my way indefinitely. And I truly believe that myself. Like I can't actually make it. And that's the part that was hardest for me to get over.
Yeah.
I think was, I don't know, not believing in myself or trusting myself. Not just confidence, but like actual like self-deception.
Yeah. No. I definitely connect to that, but it's also, at least from my perspective, it's almost been sort of a duality of like, part of me is like, I'm the fucking shit, man. You know, like I'm funny. And why don't other people understand how funny I fucking am? Or why don't other people understand how insightful I am? Like, I'm fucking awesome. Like, yeah, I'm a great fucking skier, dude. You know what I mean? I can fucking shred the guitar, man. Like, I'm the fucking bee's knees. I'm the goddamn Tits McGee over here. But then you also have that crippling realization of like, an hour and a half later, like, I'm a piece of shit. I'm a dirtbag. Oh, I forgot to fucking pay my toll bill from driving to the airport. And I've been putting it off, and like knowing that I've been putting it off, and like, why can't I get my fucking shit together just to get this one task fucking done? But I somehow can't. But then I'll go skiing, and I'm just like, yeah, dude, I'm fucking Tits McGee, top of the fucking food chain. I'm fucking awesome. Why doesn't everybody fucking like me? Like, I'm fucking hilarious, bro. I can come into a situation and just crack jokes left and fucking right. And it's this weird sort of cognitive dissonance that I've been feeling recently of holding two sort of antiquated ideas within my own head at the same time of like, yeah, I don't know. I think
Well,
I'm awesome.
those are the ups and the downs, but like those are the extremes that people in our situation tend to feel more exaggerated. But that's you in your element when you're skiing and like at your kind of peak of self completeness and confidence. And that's kind of where I am when I'm jamming out on the computer and I'm really doing awesome, coding, hacking shit. It's like, I don't know, it makes me pumped to be me,
Yeah,
And
absolutely. When you feel confident in yourself, then you're just like, oh yeah, fucking who the fuck can tell me anything?
yeah.
And then when you feel super insecure, you want to turn into a little ball of just sadness and not have anybody see you. And
Well,
it's marrying those two ideas into one of understanding like, yeah, I am awesome, but also I do still have these flaws.
the part that I'm realizing is I didn't have a lot of explicit self negativity. Like it was implied more than anything, but I wasn't actively in my head like, oh, why can't you? Like, this sucks. It was just like everything else freaked me out. And I was just like a scared. And I think that was part of me tricking myself.
Wait,
And
explain that more.
I just shut off completely rather than like be negative and like belittle myself. I don't know.
So
It was more outside. It was more like everything else was too much for me to handle. Like I couldn't, there's so much going on in life and in the world that I just didn't want to do it. And I wasn't mad at myself for it. I told myself it was okay. That was like how I got, like,
okay.
let my dishonesty be like, whatever, dude, just like pretend it's fine and just sleep all day. Get high and sleep, get high and sleep. I did that for 2 years. And just like, I still worked and I still got up and did shit, but I did the bare minimum to not die and like keep my job.
Okay. I can connect with that in a way. Every once in a while, when I'm feeling sort of like, I don't know, deep in my feels and like I've slept too much that day and I just am feeling overwhelmed. Every once in a while I wake up with it's actually the cover, it's the bluegrass cover of a Modest Mouse song, but the lyrics are, I'm trying to drink away the parts of the day that I cannot sleep away. And it's like, yeah, when you're in that depression, you want to be able to just kind of like sleep everything away. And I have found at times that I've used drinking as a way to sort of numb myself in between the times when I'm not sleeping. Let's change subjects.
All right, back to metaphors. I wanted to share one. You said, metaphors is something that I've used heavily with my therapy and like my mom and anyone that I'm sharing my experience with or trying to just talk to or vent to. Metaphors help a lot. So the one I said earlier was my red line or stalling. And that's one I use a lot, which is like I'm stuck in first gear and I'm just blowing my engine because I don't know how to shift and use it properly. I'm just like either redlining or about to stall or stalling. Like I'm fucking it up.
Yeah,
I
connect with
need
that
I need
metaphor.
I need to be able to like re-engage myself as a whole and use all the gears available and like, mellow out or even out, not necessarily mellow. I still will have ups and downs.
Yeah,
But they need
which
to
I
be
mean,
less severe.
so going back to the Everest metaphor, as far as going ups and downs, like you need to acclimate your body to these different altitudes. So that's why people go up and spend a night at Camp 1, and then they go back down to base camp and hang out there for 3 or 4 days. And then they make their way to Camp 2, and they spend a night there. So there are naturally going to be these ups and downs. And it's important, I feel, to not think of those as a negative. That's just you acclimating your brain to these new territories and these new elevations that you haven't experienced for however long, because we've sort of acclimated ourselves to something closer to sea level as opposed to 28,000 feet above sea level where oxygen isn't there. So in the metaphor, yeah, you're gonna have to go up and then come back down and then go back up, and then the goal is just to go a step farther sort of every single time, or like go make it to the next camp. And then if you fall back down, it's not ideal, but it's also something that's probably going to happen. And it's important to not beat yourself up about having to go back down and reacclimate your body or your mind.
Well, I think the self-awareness of knowing like I'm at my limit, I have to go back is part of that mental health, learning process. And my extreme, when I would go on a manic, it's like I would run up the summit with nothing, no Sherpa, no oxygen. I'd be like, I got this. And then I'd get up there, I'd pass out, I'd almost die. So like my high was really high, but then my low was really fucking low. Like they had to take me to the hospital afterwards. Right. I mean, metaphorically.
Yeah. No, totally. Like, yeah. And
whereas I just am aware and do, slower ups and downs and at my own pace.
Do you know who typically is the person who dies on Everest? The person is trying to do that sprint up, or do it without supplemental oxygen, or without a Sherpa. Like those are the people, or maybe not necessarily those people, because like there's tons of people who have summited without oxygen or without help from Sherpa, but it's the people that don't know their limit and don't know when to sort of turn around and be okay with turning around, and just like let yourself get up to Camp 4, and then if you're just not feeling it that day, and you can always come back down to base camp, because base camp is at least, that's sort of in this metaphor what I'm thinking about as this middle ground of you're not down in the dumps, you're in this acceptable world where you're trying to make it to the top. You're not necessarily going to get there in this climbing season or whatever, but allowing yourself to come back down to base camp and be okay with that, but then not allowing yourself to leave base camp and sort of travel back down and sort of move away from the progress that you're trying to make.
Well, I think progress is the key word. Like it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Like my brain tries to make it every time. Like you can have anything positive is positive, and you should be positive about that. I think that's the hardest thing for at least people like me with my kind of extreme bipolar. But Canada was a good experience for me because I got to go skiing and go a little over the top crazy, but eventually my legs stopped working and I was like, I need to ride the chairlift down. Like I'm done. This is my wall. I hit it. Like
I would have shamed. I would have shamed you so much.
I don't know. I got a lot of love, shame. I made a lot of friends with the mountain, and they were all giving me shit. It was the guys I met who worked there, It just reminded me of you. They're the ones that convinced me to take all 3 lifts to the very top, which was awesome. But it was also my 4th run of the day, which is sad. But I haven't skied in years, and all I did was blacks, so my legs were already fucked. I already ate shit earlier, and my legs just stopped. Man, I'm so out of shape. It's too much.
You gotta crawl before you walk, man, and then you
Which
gotta
is,
walk before you run.
but I realized it. I would have hurt myself seriously if I tried to ski the rest of that.
Yeah.
Like, I couldn't ski. I couldn't barely stand. Like, I had to stop.
I think,
and I realized it before hurting myself for real. So
what would have definitely happened
it's a good middle ground.
I would have given you endless shit in the moment, and then probably later on that night, I would have had a vulnerable moment with you and say like, "Hey, man, I get it. I'm glad you decided to do that because you probably would have fucked your shit up." And then once we had that vulnerable moment, I would have pushed you away and continued to give you shit for as long as I would ever know you.
Well,
you know what I mean?
but that's the best part about where I am now, as like finally crawling out of this fog of depression and self-doubt, is like I feel so solid with self-confidence that I don't give a shit, especially about you, because I love you. But everyone on the mountain, like I only knew 10 or 15 people I had met hanging out that day, but there was like every other chair on the way up was giving me shit and laughing at me. I was like, what's up? Like, I'm old. Like, I'm just making jokes. I really didn't care. I had to do it. I couldn't ski. That's my way down. Like,
so this kind of brings up something of so I agree with you that like this is one thing I've kind of learned to gain control over of, you know, somewhat embracing embarrassment of just being okay and like comfortable in your own skin and just like, I don't know. I've been talking about this a lot recently of like, I love to talk shit and make fun of people in a friendly way. Like it's never mean spirited, but I love making jokes about my friends. And the only reason why I feel comfortable enough being able to make jokes about people that I care about is because I feel willing to have those jokes made back at me, and like being able to feel comfortable with like my friends ribbing me about certain things which are justified, but then also me being able to make fun of myself. So I wouldn't feel comfortable making fun of other people. And to be honest, in our friendship, you've probably gotten it almost the worst out of most people, because I feel so comfortable being able to talk shit to you, because I know that we have this unspoken understanding that you know that I'm just joking, and you know that I fucking love you, and I'm only talking shit because it's just funny. Because not gonna
lie, you guys used to just feed the Grendel with all that shit. I mean, that was like, dude, part of my. It was actually a lot of fun.
I feel comfortable giving you shit because it's fucking just easy fodder, and it's just like you're ripe for the jokes, but also because I know you can take it, and I know you have enough self-esteem that it's not going to really offend you. And if I ever did, you can always come to me and just be like, hey man, what you said was kind of fucked up. And I'd be like, yeah, it fucking was. I felt that in the moment. And
I don't think I've ever thought twice about anything any of you guys have ever said or made fun of me for. Yeah. Like, it was all, well, I mean, maybe in the moment when you guys were like physically, it was when you guys started doing like the slaps and the making fun at the same time. That's when Grendel would come out and I would just start wrestling.
In high school, it definitely got a little aggressive. Maybe you went too far, for sure. But so yeah, to the point I was making of, I only feel comfortable, giving you that amount of shit because I feel comfortable being able to take that amount of shit. You know what I mean? And I think that's a good thing. Like you saying that, like, being comfortable with being embarrassed in the moment is something maybe I've subconsciously learned from you, because you've never had like almost any shame.
I had so many embarrassing moments like very early on that nothing could really top them. So it's like, now I don't even remember what they were, but
not only early on, I could bring up stuff from middle school. I
I
could bring
don't.
up stuff from high school. I could bring up stuff from college. I could bring up stuff from Vegas when you fucking were caught sleepwalking fucking almost butt naked in the fucking hotel casino. You know what I mean? And you were just
Yeah,
like,
it's like
yeah, what's
it's like
up?
literally people's nightmares. I've lived those nightmares.
Yeah,
Just
and
recently, in fact, that was last year.
somehow that was 9 months ago, and somehow
Oh
you're
my
just like,
God.
Wow.
yeah, what's up? I was walking around the fucking the
It was
Excalibur
not.
fucking
Yeah.
casino,
Like
basically
literally
naked.
woke up in my boxers on the casino floor. That was fun. But the worst one was one when we lived together. Remember, and I finally did the
When you shit your pants.
no. Oh, that was pretty funny. I also didn't care about that when I was trying to fart over you guys.
That was still one of the hardest I've ever laughed in my entire life. The transition of the look on your face from sheer determination to just fart in the room and make us uncomfortable to the face of you realizing that you just shit your pants. It's
And then I just waddled away.
it's just so terrified. Cheeks clenched together as hard as the Titans could.
That still happens to me at least once a year. Like, surprise. Oh.
But it was just, that was one of the best moments of my life. And I still think about that probably every couple months of how funny that was.
No, that was pretty. I mean, that was kind of embarrassing, but that was also you guys, and it was like funny as hell. And I'm like, 4 feet from the bathroom, so it's like whatever.
But that's the thing, is that's the tough transition of being able to feel that sort of sense of comfortability with people, or like that sense of not being embarrassed and not piling on yourself for essentially fucking up in a situation. The difference between like doing that with people that you are truly genuinely comfortable with versus a group of strangers or in a different moment, like that's a bridge that is hard to cross.
Well, that was the story I was actually thinking of. Is we were at some party at some of the other girls' apartment, like down the hall, and somebody hit the death cup playing against me, like second shot or something, and I didn't make any cups. And I was always so adamant about the naked lap, but no one ever did it. But I was always kind of an asshole trying to talk people into it, that I just kind of said, fuck it, and I went for it. But then everyone hid my clothes. And so I came back up, and I was locked out of our apartment. And so I had to walk back into someone else's apartment where I only knew like half the people, butt ass naked, and asked for my clothes back. And it was like, fuck it, this is happening.
Yeah.
But it's like that. It's like, oh, I don't think it's going to get much more embarrassing than that.
I'm reflecting on that on two different levels of I admire your willingness to stand by your own rules, because I'm very much the same way, of like trying very much not to be hypocritical of like, if this is how I expect other people to act in this certain situation, like, if this is a rule and if you do this, then this is what the consequence is. I connect with that very sort of intensely of just like, yeah, no, if this is the rule that I set of this is how you behave, and I go against that, then
I mean,
I
it
have to
applies
suffer the
to me too.
consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Like if
So,
I've made
it was a
other
point of
people,
pride. It didn't take much convincing. I was like, yep.
Yeah. If I expect this out of other people, then I better damn fucking sure expect this out of myself. And if I can't commit to this, then why on earth would I expect other people to commit to it? So I respect that. But I also, it reminds me of when I pissed my pants at Alex Nicklin's. Probably believe this, but and I pissed my pants in the middle of a fucking party and then had to wear like the shortest short Speedos for the rest of the night. And you essentially have two options in that moment. is either you have to analyze, this is an inherently awkward moment. Do I lean in or do I push away? And the result of pushing away and trying to hide the awkwardness is only going to make it more awkward. So you kind of have to make that conscious choice of like, all right, well, I guess I have to lean into this, because if I don't, then it's just going to be so much worse. So if I just accept that this is what's happening in the moment and there is nothing I can do right now to change it, you're in there. You know, and it's a weird psychological trick that can be very helpful in situations. But then also, I don't know. Sometimes I find myself in such a lack of awareness that I think I'm leaning into the thing that I should be leaning into. And then all of a sudden, I quickly realize I'm leaning in the wrong direction. And now I feel so much awkward pressure on myself for doing whatever it is. And now I'm filled with embarrassment, and now I just need to fucking leave and not be able to talk and just avoid everybody and hope that everyone.
That's what you got. You got to double, triple, quadruple down on that, and just get even weirder at that point. That's my philosophy.
That can maybe work out, but also it can bite you. It's
no, I don't even know exactly the
I don't know
subjects, but
yeah, I don't know. It's I've been spending so much time, like, it's honestly has been kind of exhausting because all of these realizations of my own sort of neurodiversity have been happening so quick. And I feel like I've been talking about it so much that it's been exhausting, because you were honestly probably more mature than I was in recognizing your differences, or, you know, for lack of a better word, I guess.
I might be the only fill in the blank that works for that statement.
Wait, what?
Me being more mature.
Well, but
I'm digging into myself.
Yeah, fair enough. And again, going back to whatever, self-deprecating humor. I feel like I do self-deprecating humor. The principle in my mind is, at least if I can make a joke about this first, then nobody else is going to be able to rib me for it, because I already sort of established that it's fine whatever you say. You know what I mean? But maybe mature isn't the right word, but I think inherently I had too much pride and too much ego, even though I knew I wasn't mentally well, where I had the idea of like, I can fix this. I was a psych major, bro.
I think that
mean?
that comes full circle to like the intro to this conversation, which is the stigma around it, right? That's part of
go for full circle.
Full circle, bro.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Half circles can suck my dick. Full circles, let's
can touch
go.
my tip. Oh wait.
You said it, not me. I'll leave it in. We'll fucking leave it in. Edit a big tit in Charlie's mouth for that one.
That worked pretty well. Anyway, yeah, full circle. I think that comes back like nature versus nurture, and nurture being society and stigmas around it, especially, you know what I mean? Like, it's especially for men, it's really hard to acknowledge that as I'm
getting close.
A shortcoming or an ailment.
Yeah, totally. No, so that's one thing that we sort of talked about this the other night, but I'm somewhat worried about the stigma behind people on the spectrum. And it's kind of hard to let people know that without them. it's a chess game of figuring out how to sort of tell people that this is what's going on with me without being off-putting, or without, you know, the last thing I would want anybody to do is treat me differently, in the sense of like treating me like almost like a child, of like, you know, as soon as you say you have any mental illness, a lot of people's trigger is going to be to sort of tiptoe around things.
It'll be insincere, not empathy,
but sort of just like the feeling of like, hey, how's it going?
sympathy,
You know,
insincere sympathy.
how are you doing? Is everything okay?
Yeah.
And, you know, with my feelings of needing more just direct, like, communication from people, like, that's the opposite of what I want. What I want more from being able to reach out to people and
So
say,
start
like,
with that.
and that's what I'm trying to do.
Anybody that you plan on being that honest with, and, you know, giving them this talk, should be somebody who's, you know, friendly and willing enough to listen to that explanation. And especially if you front load it with that, you know, and make it very clear, like, hey, this is what's happening. Like, definitely don't want any, what would you call that, special treatment, or, you know, whatever that conversation becomes. Like,
Yeah.
what you just said was good. I already forgot.
Again, this is me trying to learn tools of being able to say, like, hey, I would rather have you treat me more directly and not be worried about me, you know, hurting my feelings by saying things directly. Like, if I've come to understand that at certain times I can be very obnoxious and overbearing and very fucking annoying, because in my head, again, I'm like, I'm just doing it. I'm doing a bit. I'm being funny. Like, this is just me being wacky and being silly. And now I'm realizing, like, oh yeah, there's probably a lot of people that were just like, in their head, they were thinking, will this dude just shut the fuck up for a goddamn fucking minute? But most people are so afraid to say that because it goes against the social norms. But I kind of want to encourage that and just have someone give me the business. Like, tell me if I'm being too much. Fucking please let me know, because I lack the awareness to understand when I'm taking things too far.
Was it not you? We had like a joke, like there was like a safe word that would basically be like, Charlie, calm down. That might have been Josh. I think it was Josh. There was times where we were like hanging out with people and I was going off the wall, and I forgot what it was. There was somewhere he would just be like, it was the same. It was like a kill switch. It was like, dude, turn it off.
So ironically,
but we actually like had that discussion multiple times and came up with like, hey, when I say this, it means you gotta chill out, because you've seen me kind of be socially completely oblivious.
Yeah. So I don't think we've ever talked about this. This must have been you and Josh. But it's funny because my friend Allie figured out the word anyways. Whereas if I was going on a bit for way too long, or just like, you know, being just my unaware self, and I was just like going and going and going, she would find a spot where she could just go anyways. And then that became like a Pavlovian trigger of like, okay, all right, sit the fuck down. And I'm trying to learn how to analyze those situations on my own and be able to sort of realize, like, okay, maybe I'm being too much and I just need to back the fuck away and not talk on the microphone for a quick second. Which is so hard because I don't even know exactly why, but when I feel like I have a good thought or I have a good joke or I have something that should be put forward, I feel like an almost compulsive need that everybody else is on the same page as me and really wants to hear this as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if they don't, get the fuck out. Like, you don't care at that point. But if someone tells you straight up that you trust and know, I think if it's a random person, wouldn't you be like, fuck off? Or would you trust? I guess maybe it depends on their demeanor, because like, I feel like I get a gauge of somebody like right away, like within a few minutes of seeing or talking to them. Like if they told me to shut up, whether or not I would listen or like want to fight them for it. And for me,
It totally
it's
depends
not
on the
very
energy.
it's not very much the second, but I do kind of like fighting sometimes.
It 100% depends on the energy. Because I'm not looking for confrontation. If somebody comes at me with a confrontational energy and tells me to shut the fuck up, then like, yeah, I'll probably end up escalating that situation. But if it's somebody that I know and I feel comfortable with, who's just like, shush, 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 shush. Like, hey, just bring it down. Like, hey, or just, an arm grab and just saying like, hey, we're at a wedding right now. Maybe don't do that. And I would just go, okay, fuck. I was unaware of that. Like, because I get excited sometimes. And especially like if I get any feedback from people that I'm doing things that are making them laugh, then it's just like, oh,
it's
so
like
they
the
want
class
more.
clown syndrome.
They want more, man.
Yeah.
I'm getting a standing ovation right now. They want another 15 minutes. I just closed my set, but they want another 15 minutes. So I'm gonna go and please the crowd. So like, I'm very susceptible to that energy of like, if I get a feedback, like if I get a positive feedback, I'm just like, oh, they're confirming part of my internal perception of, yeah, I'm fucking awesome, man. You know what I mean?
Described like all of elementary school at the private school that I went to. They were so strict about sending me to the principals that I went to the principals at least once a month, if not closer to once a week. And 99% of the time it was for just doing exactly that. Like, but they would send you the principal because I put a pencil in my shirt. Like, it was pretty dumb.
Well,
I did get suspended because I made a big giant cock out of silly putty. That was a good one. We made silly putty in science class, and I remember the teacher looked and he kind of laughed. He's like, shit. He's like, I have to take you to detention now.
But that was also like sort of Catholic school, right? Or like Christian
school.
Yeah.
Oh, it was ridiculous. And I was me, and so the principal was actually kind of nice. Like, I hung out with the,
Well, anyway. I also think
I only really got in trouble a couple times, but I got detention regularly.
I also think that there's a factor of that sort of the Christian Catholic school idea of like hyper suppression of doing anything. So then it's the same thing. Like, when is it the hardest to not laugh? When somebody farts in church, because that's not an appropriate place for a fart. You know what I mean? Yeah. So if that happens, you're not supposed to laugh. You're not supposed to react in that way. And because you're not supposed to react in that way, it makes it 10 times funnier and 10 times harder to not react the way you fundamentally want to. So I think that maybe has a part to play of like,
that's like a whole nother branch of human nature, isn't it? Like, we want what we can't have kind of thing. Or, but it's not the same, but it's that kind of anti-pattern that humans have with most.
Yeah, I mean, that could go into a sexual realm of like, you don't want a nice girl. You want a dirty girl. You want a girl who's fucking naughty. You know what I mean? Because that's not acceptable in culture. So you want that. It's the same allure of smoking weed in high school, where it's taboo. You know what I mean? It's the same thing with so many things that are like, they're somewhat accepted in the world, but they're also really not. And that's why Americans have such a higher level of alcoholism than they do in Europe, because in Europe it's not seen as taboo to have a couple sips of wine when you're 7-8 years old. It's, you can drink legally at 14, 15, 16 years old. So it doesn't have this allure of the thing you want to see in a magic show is what's going on behind the fucking curtains. You know what I mean? Yeah. The stuff that's happening in front of you, you don't give a shit about. It's what's being sort of hidden and withheld from you that you desire most. And so when alcohol or, sex or, being a shitbag fucking 13-year-old kid isn't as stigmatized, you don't want to do it as much. Whereas if it's, if you're forced away from it and you're held from it.
I don't think it's like a blatant, X equals Y kind of correlation, but it's definitely a big factor, right? I
No,
think
but
there's a lot of other factors involved in
what
what it is
happens
and who's involved.
what happens to a kid when you take their favorite toy away? Or you tell
What
them
happens
no?
when you take any toy away? That becomes their favorite toy.
Well, yeah, exactly.
You
Okay,
can't take that
that's
one.
yeah, exactly. And so when you don't present alcohol or marijuana or sex as like, hey, this is an okay thing to talk about, then kids aren't going to really worry about it, as opposed to if you keep it hidden and you keep it taboo and you keep it sort of pulled behind the smoke and mirrors. They want to figure out why the fuck you're hiding this from me. When, yeah, like you said, like if you take a toy away, that's the one toy that they want. So for a kid, if you take away sex or alcohol and you just try and hide it, then that's the thing that they're going to go for. Like that's the whole thing of like Catholic schoolgirls. Who is more of a freak in bed than a fucking Catholic schoolgirl? And the reason why they're such freaks is because all of their sexual desires have been so repressed for their entire life. And so then when they finally get to sort of like release all of that energy, then they get
Actually, I've
fucked
never
by
sung
15
about
dudes in a night, bro.
that.
They get
Well, that's
nailed
what I
by
was
the
going to
entire
say.
school fucking football team.
Well, it's interesting because it happens kind of drastically in real time and also like delayed. Like there's the people in middle school, in high school who are rebelling, doing drugs, ditching, failing out, going to rehab already. Like we knew, there's always some of those kind of people that just deviated super hard. Like, fuck the man, I'm going to do what I want. You can't tell me what to do. And then there's the people that kind of
Those
continued
people all
living in the
listen to
bubble
Rage Against the
in the
Machine.
yeah.
Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. Fuck you, I won't do what you tell me.
Anyway,
No,
and then
yeah.
there's the people that continue the bubble and then like leave the nest, so to speak, and then that's when they go down the deep end. And it sucks because you get it on both sides, fighting against that the same mentality, either real time or delayed.
Well, and everyone has their own coping mechanisms. Some of those, I mean, a huge majority, or at least a huge portion of those Catholic schoolgirls uh, didn't become just raging sluts. And they got into knitting or making crafts. And they got settled down at 20 years old and they had a family and that's now their life. And they're probably going to get divorced in fucking 10 years and then they're going to fucking probably exhibit that slutty behavior when they're a fucking divorcee and get onto Ashley Madison or whatever.
Tommy!
But it's, I mean, to sum things up, I guess, everyone's psychology is very different. Everyone's genetics and predisposition to whatever is very different. And also everyone's experience is very different. And humans are such complex creatures that we're all going to inherently react to everything in a very different way. They do the studies on twins that were separated at birth and realizing that they sort of, they acclimate to certain activities or to certain foods or whatever. But then also twins that are, monozygotic twins that have the exact same genetics that are raised in the same household can often end up becoming very, very different people once they've matured and once they've gone through all of their sort of nurturing and all of their growing up and become the person that they are going to be for the rest of their life. So it's such a complicated quilt of influences and experiences. And I guess the moral of the story is like, I think in most people, are probably fucked up in their own specific way. And I think there's a lot of people out there in the world that are denying that and not taking steps to progress themselves mentally, I guess. And I would say, I guess that's the moral story. You know?
Well said.
Get therapy. Fucking do it. Quit being an ass.
Not a big deal. Awareness and progress. Those are the big words.
What I would say, in at least for my perspective of just trying to be as transparent and honest as possible, is therapy isn't a big deal, but it also is. You know what I mean? It's a nuance.
I mean, I'm at the stigma side of it. You're right.
Yeah, I knew what you were saying, but I felt the need to clarify and to be able
to
say, yeah, it is stigma. It can be stigmatized, but it shouldn't be. But also, it is, coming from my own personal experience, it's not a fucking easy thing to do. Like, it shouldn't be hard to jump into, but it is at the same point. And it's up to you whether or not you feel like you're willing to take that step. And as hard as it seems, once you get in the pool, it's the same thing. Like, metaphors again. It's the same thing, getting into a hot tub that's 112 degrees. It's not going to feel super comfortable right when you jump in. It's going to be a shock to your system, and it's going to feel really hot, and it's going to aggravate your body and your skin. But once you get into the pool, it's pretty good. You know what I mean?
Let it sink in.
Dude, once you bunny bat or Bugs Bunny your way in there and just like,
yeah, I spent a lot of time at the hot tub last week. Felt good. It's pretty broken. Was that 2 weeks ago?
Charlie going.
Time is an illusion.
Charlie going very literal with the metaphor of the hot tub just now.
No, I want a hot tub. I'm in so much pain. Always.
But I feel like I would say that's a good place to wrap things up. That was a good convo, and I think that was a good podcast. Let's do some sort of a proper sign off of. All right, so I guess Charlie needs to take a leak. That's the end of the episode. I think that was a good one. Fucking take care of yourself. Go see a fucking therapist if you need it. Go for a fucking walk. Handle your mental health. It's something we should all be talking about. Charlie, any last words?
Also, physical health. I'm going back to physical therapy tomorrow.
There we go. Sure. And you know what? Physical health.
I was about to say it.
It translates into mental health. So if you get yourself moving, that'll probably help. But also,
guaranteed,
go see a doctor. Maybe, hopefully, in the future, we'll be sponsored by BetterHelp. But I don't know. Check them out, maybe. I'm still trying to find like a good proper sign out for these. We were sort of playing around with, and that's one to grow on, but that seems fucking lame. Charlie, your best outro pitch. One word, one phrase. Let's hear it.
No fun in this zone.
Fuck. If that's what we're coming at you with, I feel bad. Everybody fucking take care.
As a winner.
We'll see you guys fucking next week, I guess, or some shit. Whatever. It's
Don't
free.
leave these up to me.
It's free. Listen to it. It's good.
Or kisses. No, it's weird.
That's officially going to be the end right there. All right, guys. Yes. We'll catch you later. That's the end.
All right.